The morning started like any other on the Velthari mining station. Thylex walked through the crystal corridors, watching his people work with their usual calm and grace. The Velthari were tall and thin, with bones that looked like beautiful crystal under their pale skin. They moved slowly and spoke softly, as their kind had done for thousands of years. The mining station floated in the asteroid belt of Kepler 442, far from their home world. Here, they gathered rare minerals that powered their peaceful cities. Thylex had been the commander of this station for 5 years. He loved the quiet work and the way his people helped each other without fighting or anger, but this morning was different. The warning alarms started screaming. "Commander Thylex!" called Valara, the station's sensor operator. Her crystal-like hands shook as she pointed at her screen. "Ships! Many ships coming toward us!" Thylex rushed to the main control room. On the big screen, he saw something that made his blood turn cold. Hundreds of dark ships moved through space like angry insects. They were Nexari ships, and everyone in the galaxy knew what that meant. The Nexari Empire was the most feared force in known space. They were thick, strong beings with dark skin like metal. They lived for war and conquest. They took what they wanted and destroyed anyone who tried to stop them. Thylex had heard stories of worlds that tried to fight the Nexari. None of those worlds existed anymore. "How long until they reach us?" Thylex asked. 2 hours. Maybe less, Valara said. Her voice was very quiet, the way Velthari spoke when they were scared. Thylex looked around the control room. His people stared at him with their large, gentle eyes. They were miners and scientists, not soldiers. The Velthari had no real weapons, no warships, no army. Their whole culture was built on peace and helping others. "Send a message to the Nexari fleet," Thylex said. "Tell them we are peaceful. Tell them we will share our minerals if they leave us alone." The message went out through space. Thylex waited, hoping the Nexari would listen to reason. All peaceful species could talk and find solutions together. Surely the Nexari would understand. The answer came back quickly. It was a video message from a huge Nexari with scars covering his face. "I am Warlord Krex," the alien said. His voice was like rocks grinding together. "Your station and everything in it now belongs to the Nexari Empire. Surrender and die quickly, or fight and die slowly. Those are your only choices." The message ended. Thylex felt something break inside his chest. His people gathered around him, waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? They had no weapons that could hurt the Nexari ships. They're mining. Tools could cut rock, but not metal warships. "Commander," said Jorik, the station's engineer. "What do we do?" Thylex thought hard. The Velthari had always solved problems by thinking and talking. But how do you talk to someone who only wants to destroy you? How do you think your way out of a situation where thinking is not enough? Then he remembered something. His people had built a powerful communications array for talking to other mining stations. It could send messages very far through space, much farther than normal ship radios. "Jorik," Thylex said, "can our communications array reach beyond this system?" "Yes, Commander. It can send messages to many star systems at once. Then send out a distress call. Send it everywhere, to every frequency, to anyone who might hear it." Jorik's crystal-like face looked confused. "But Commander, who would help us? The other peaceful species are too far away, and the strong species like the Nexari would not care about our problems." "Maybe," Thylex said, "but maybe there is someone out there we have not met yet. Someone who is both strong enough to help and good enough to care." Jorik nodded and went to work. Within minutes, the message was ready. Thylex himself spoke the words that would go out into the dark between the stars. This is Commander Thylex of the Velthari mining station in the Kepler 442 system. We are under attack by the Nexari Empire. We are a peaceful people with no weapons, to defend ourselves. If anyone receives this message, please help us. We do not want to die. The message went out into space at the speed of light. Thylex watched it go and felt both hope and fear. Hope that someone good would hear it. Fear that someone bad would hear it instead. Far away at the edge of known space, humans had built a small listening post. It was one of many that Earth had placed around their territory to watch for dangers. The humans were new to space travel, and they knew the galaxy could be a dangerous place. Communications Officer Hana was working the night shift when the alien message came through her equipment. At first, she thought it was just space noise, but then she heard the words and realized what she was listening to. "Station Commander Taman," she called. "You need to hear this right now." Taman came running. He was a serious man who had served in Earth's military before joining the space service. He listened to the message 3 times before he spoke. "It's a distress call from an alien species," he said. "They're being attacked by something called the Nexari Empire." Hana looked at him with bright eyes. "This is it, sir. This is our first chance to make contact with friendly aliens. If we help them, maybe they'll want to be our friends." Taman thought about Earth's rules. Humans were supposed to be careful about getting involved in alien wars, but these Velthari sounded peaceful and scared. And if humans wanted to make friends in the galaxy, this might be their only chance. "Send a reply," Taman said. "Tell them, help is coming." Back on the mining station, Thylex almost fell down when the answer came. The voice spoke in broken Velthari, clearly translated by a computer. "Velthari Station, this is Human Monitoring Post 7. We received your message. We are sending ships to help you. Stay strong. Help is coming." Thylex had never heard of humans before, but their message filled him with hope. Someone out there cared enough to help. Someone was coming to save his people. He called his staff together and shared the good news. The Velthari celebrated in their quiet way, touching hands and humming soft songs. They imagined their rescuers would be like them, peaceful, wise, and gentle. They thought the humans would probably have better technology, but the same kind heart. They had no idea what was really coming to save them. 3 human ships dropped out of hyperspace near the Velthari mining station. They were not big ships, but they looked dangerous in a way that made space itself seem darker around them. Sharp edges, dark metal, and weapon ports that looked like hungry mouths. Admiral Kyung stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the alien station through the view screen. He was a careful man who had fought in Earth's last war. He knew that first meetings with aliens could go very wrong very quickly. "Captain Bora," he said to the woman commanding the destroyer Soul's Pride, "take us in slowly. Keep weapons powered but not targeted. We don't want to scare them." Captain Bora nodded. She was young for a ship captain, but she had proven herself in several battles. Her crew trusted her completely. "Understood, Admiral. Moving to docking position." On the 3rd ship, Marine Colonel Jiho checked his equipment one more time. He was a big man with scars on his hands from years of fighting. His Marines were the best Earth had to offer, tough, smart, and ready for anything, but even Jiho felt nervous about meeting aliens for the first time. "Remember," he told his troops over the radio, "these are the good guys. They asked for our help. But stay alert. We don't know what we're walking into." The human ships moved toward the crystal station like sharks approaching a coral reef. Inside the station, the Velthari watched their rescuers arrive with growing worry. "They look so aggressive," whispered Valara. The human ships had none of the smooth, artistic curves that peaceful species used. Everything about them said weapon and war and danger. Thylex tried to stay calm. "Perhaps they need strong ships to fight the Nexari," he said. But deep inside, he was starting to wonder what kind of beings built ships that looked like they were designed only for killing. The docking went smoothly. Human engineering was very good, even if it looked scary. Admiral Kyung, Captain Bora, and Colonel Jiho put on their best uniforms and prepared to meet the aliens. They had studied what little they knew about the Velthari from the distress call, but they were not prepared for how different the aliens would be. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Thylex waited on the other side with 5 of his staff. When he saw the humans, he almost stepped backward in shock. The humans were thick and heavy-looking, with dense bones and muscles that showed through their clothes. Their eyes pointed forward, like predators, and when they moved, every step looked like they were hunting something. Admiral Kyung was not even trying to look dangerous, but to the Velthari, he looked like death walking on 2 legs. "Greetings," Admiral Kyung said carefully. His translation device turned his words into Velthari language. "I am Admiral Kyung of the Earth Defense Fleet. We came as quickly as we could," Thylex forced himself to speak. "Thank you for coming, Admiral. I am Commander Thylex. We are very grateful for your help." The words were polite, but both sides could feel the wrongness in the air. The humans seemed confused by how fragile and nervous the Velthari looked. The Velthari were terrified by how strong and predatory the humans appeared. Colonel Jiho stepped forward, and the Velthari actually moved backward. He was just trying to be friendly, but to them he looked like he was preparing to attack. "Sir," he said to Admiral Kyung, "perhaps I should show them our defensive capabilities, help them understand what we can do." "Good idea, Colonel," the Admiral said. Jiho called up 6 of his Marines. They moved with perfect military precision, each step coordinated with the others. Their weapons were ready, but not aimed at anyone. To humans, this looked professional and reassuring. To the Velthari, it looked like a pack of predators getting ready to hunt. The Marines demonstrated a few simple maneuvers: how they would take cover, how they would advance on an enemy position, how they coordinated their movements without speaking. It was basic military training that any human soldier would recognize. The Velthari watched in growing horror. The humans moved like they had been born for war. Every gesture was efficient and deadly. They worked together like parts of a single weapon. When one Marine pointed to a position, the others instantly understood and moved to support him. "This is how we fight," Colonel Jiho explained proudly. "We train constantly to work as a team. No enemy can stand against us when we fight together." Thylex felt sick to his stomach. These were not gentle rescuers with better technology. These were apex predators who had turned warfare into an art form. He began to wonder if calling for help had been the worst mistake of his life. "Admiral," Thylex said carefully, "how many of your people are warriors?" "All of them," Admiral Kyung answered without thinking. "Every human serves in the military or supports the military. It's been that way since we reached the stars." The Velthari looked at each other with fear in their crystal-like eyes. An entire species of warriors? What kind of horrible world had produced such beings? Captain Bora tried to make things better. "Don't worry," she said with a smile. "We're here to protect you. No one will hurt you while we're around." But her smile showed teeth that looked very sharp to the Velthari, and her hand rested on her weapon without her even thinking about it. Everything about her said dangerous, even when she was trying to be kind. The meeting continued for another hour, but it got worse instead of better. The humans talked about tactics and weapons and battle plans with the casual ease that the Velthari talked about mining and art. Every story the humans told involved fighting or surviving something that tried to kill them. "On Earth," Colonel Jiho said, "we have storms that can destroy cities, earthquakes that split the ground open, and predators that hunt in packs. Every human child learns to fight because Earth is always trying to kill us." The Velthari had never heard of such a world. Their home planet was gentle and safe, with soft weather and peaceful animals. The idea of growing up on a world that was actively hostile was beyond their understanding. When the meeting finally ended, the humans returned to their ships feeling confused and frustrated. The aliens they had come to save seemed more afraid of them than grateful for their help. "They act like we're the bad guys," Captain Bora said to Admiral Kyung. "We came here to save them." "Different species, different ways of thinking," the Admiral replied. But he was worried too. Making friends in the galaxy was not going to be as easy as Earth had hoped. On the station, Thylex gathered his senior staff for an emergency meeting. "We may have made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. "These humans, they are not like us. They are predators, warriors. They think about nothing but fighting and killing." "But they came to help us?" Valara said. "Did they?" Thylex asked. "Or did they come because they want to fight the Nexari? What happens after they defeat our enemies? Will they just leave? Or will they decide that our station would make a good prize?" The Velthari had no answer. They had asked for help, and help had come. But the help had claws and teeth and weapons that could destroy worlds. Meanwhile, in the darkness of space, Warlord Krex received reports about the human ships. His intelligence officers told him that the newcomers were small in number and unknown in the galaxy. 3 ships? He laughed. They sent 3 small ships to fight the mighty Nexari Empire. These humans must be even more foolish than the Velthari. Krex decided to speed up his attack. He would crush both the Velthari and their strange rescuers in one quick battle. Then he would take their technology and add it to the Nexari arsenal. He had no idea what he was about to face. The Nexari attack came at dawn, station time. Hundreds of dark ships moved through the asteroid field like a swarm of angry hornets. Warlord Krex had decided to end this quickly with overwhelming force. He brought every ship he could spare. Battle cruisers, destroyers, fighter squadrons, and troop transports full of Nexari warriors. "Look at them run," Krex said from his command ship. On his screens, he could see the 3 human vessels moving away from the Velthari station. "The cowards flee before we even fire a shot." But Admiral Kyung was not fleeing. He was positioning his small fleet where they could do the most good. The human ships moved with purpose, sliding between asteroids and using the rocky debris as cover. "Captain Bora," Admiral Kyung said over the radio, "take the Soul's Pride to Grid 7. Use the big asteroid for cover and wait for my signal." "Understood, Admiral," Bora replied. Her crew worked smoothly, moving their destroyer into position. The ship disappeared behind a mountain of rock and metal. On the mining station, Thylex watched the approaching Nexari fleet with despair. So many ships. So many weapons. His people had nowhere to run and no way to fight. "Commander," called Valara from her sensor station, "the Nexari are broadcasting a message. Warlord Krex is scarred." Face appeared on the main screen. "Velthari scum," he growled. "You will surrender now or watch your station burn. Your human friends have already abandoned you. No one is coming to save you." Thylex looked at his staff. They were all crystal thin and gentle, built for thinking and creating, not for war. The approaching Nexari warriors were thick and strong, bred for conquest and destruction. "Send our surrender," Thylex said quietly. There was no point in getting his people killed for nothing. But before Valara could send the message, Colonel Jiho's voice came through the radio. "Velthari Station, this is Colonel Jiho. Do not surrender. We are not running away. We are getting ready to fight." Thylex almost laughed, but it would have been bitter laughter. 3 small human ships against hundreds of Nexari vessels. It was not a fight. It was suicide. The first Nexari fighters reached the station's outer defense grid. The Velthari had a few mining lasers set up as weapons, but they were weak and slow. The Nexari fighters destroyed them in seconds with their plasma. Cannons, Nexari troops began boarding the outer sections of the station. They moved in heavy armor, carrying weapons that could cut through metal walls. The few Velthari security guards tried to stop them, but their crystal-like bones shattered under Nexari weapons. "Section C is lost," reported Jorik. "Section B is under attack. They're cutting through our doors like they're made of paper." Thylex closed his eyes. This was how his people would die. Slowly, section by section, as the Nexari took their station apart, piece by piece. Then something impossible happened. A Nexari fighter squadron was moving through the asteroid field when they suddenly came under attack. But the attack did not come from where they expected. Human fighters dove at them from above, coming out of the shadow of a large asteroid. The lead Nexari pilot had just enough time to see the human ships before plasma fire tore through his cockpit. The human fighters moved like nothing he had ever seen, rolling and spinning and diving through space as if the laws of physics were just suggestions. "What are they doing?" Krex demanded as he watched his fighters fall. "Those maneuvers are impossible!" Lieutenant Sunho was flying the lead human fighter. He pulled his ship through a turn that should have torn it apart, following a Nexari bomber as it tried to escape. The human fighter's weapons were smaller than Nexari guns, but Sunho did not try to match them shot for shot. Instead, he aimed for the bomber's engines, its weapon systems, its life support. The Nexari bomber exploded, but before the debris had finished falling, Sunho was already diving toward his next target. On the main Nexari battleship, Warlord Krex watched his carefully, planned attack falling apart. "How are they doing this?" he roared. "They only have 3 ships." But the humans were not fighting like any species Krex had encountered before. Most aliens fought in formations, following predictable patterns. The humans seemed to be making up their tactics as they went along, adapting to each situation with deadly creativity. Captain Bora brought the Soul's Pride out from behind its asteroid cover and opened fire on a Nexari cruiser. But instead of the long-range bombardment that most species preferred, she took her ship in close, dangerously close. The human destroyer actually scraped against the Nexari ship's hull as it fired at point-blank range. "They're insane!" shouted the Nexari cruiser's captain as his ship took devastating damage. "They're actually ramming us!" But Bora was not trying to ram the enemy ship. She was using a human tactic called knife fighting. getting so close that the enemy's big guns could not target her while her smaller weapons tore them apart from inside their defenses. The most shocking part came when Colonel Jiho led his Marines in boarding pods. The pods were launched from the human ships like bullets, crossing space to attach themselves to Nexari vessels. Boarding pods? Krex could not believe what he was seeing. In the middle of a space battle? That's suicide. Most species considered boarding actions to be impossible during active combat. The risk was too great, the chance of success too small. But humans had different ideas about acceptable risk. Sergeant Minho led the first boarding team. His pod cut through the hull of a Nexari destroyer, and his Marines poured through the breach wearing spacesuits and carrying weapons designed for close combat. The Nexari crew had never faced anything like human Marines in their own ship. The humans moved through zero gravity like they had been born in space. They used the ship's own corridors and systems against its crew, turning maintenance shafts into ambush points and cutting power to sections they wanted to capture. "The humans are inside!" screamed a Nexari officer over the radio. "They're taking the ship from the inside!" But the strangest thing was how the humans fought. They did not just try to win. They tried to destroy their enemies so completely that other enemies would be afraid to fight them. Every attack was designed to cause maximum psychological damage, as well as physical damage. Pilot Jisoo demonstrated this when she flew her fighter directly through the explosion of a Nexari bomber she had just destroyed. The other Nexari pilots watched in horror as the human ship emerged from the fireball completely undamaged, already hunting for its next target. "They fly through explosions," whispered a Nexari fighter pilot. "They use our own debris as cover. What kind of beings are these?" On the mining station, the Velthari watched the battle with amazement and growing horror. The humans fought like they had no fear of death. They took risks that should have killed them and turned those risks into weapons against their enemies. "They're destroying themselves to hurt the Nexari," Valara said. "Why would anyone do that?" But Thylex was beginning to understand. These humans did not fight just to win. They fought to protect, and they were willing to die to protect people they had just met. The Nexari attack that should have taken 1 hour stretched into 3. Warlord Krex watched his superior numbers and firepower become meaningless against enemies who refused to fight by normal rules. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 37 ships. The humans have lost none." Krex stared at the battle display. How do you fight an enemy that treats certain death as just another tactic? News of the battle spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Across hundreds of star systems, alien civilizations received the same impossible report. 3 human ships had stopped a full Nexari invasion fleet. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Dongmin read the battle reports in his office deep beneath the mountains of Korea. He was an old man who had seen many wars, but this report made him feel young again. His people had finally made their mark on the galaxy. "Send a message to Admiral Kyung," he told his aide. "Tell him that Task Force Hammer is being deployed immediately. Full authorization for Deathworlder protocols." The aide, a young officer named Era, looked confused. "Sir, what are Deathworlder protocols?" Admiral Dongmin smiled grimly. "Something we hoped we would never have to use, Lieutenant. But if the galaxy wants to see what humans can really do, then we will show them." Meanwhile, in the Kepler 442 system, Warlord Krex was learning what the term Deathworlder meant. His intelligence officers had finally accessed the galactic database and found references to humans in the oldest files. "Sir," his chief analyst reported nervously, According to these records, humans are classified as a Deathworlder species. Krex had heard legends of Deathworlders, but he had always thought they were myths. The story spoke of beings from planets so hostile that only the most dangerous predators could survive there. Such creatures were supposed to be impossible. 2. Violent to achieve space travel, too aggressive to build civilizations. That cannot be right, Krex said. Deathworlders are legends, children's stories to scare young warriors. But the evidence was right in front of him. Humans came from a planet called Earth, where the gravity was twice that of most civilized worlds. The weather included storms that could level cities. The ground moved without warning, and the native life forms spent all their time trying to kill each other. Sir, the analyst continued, their planet has creatures called sharks that are literally living weapons, and tigers that hunt alone and can kill prey 3 times their size, and something called bears that— Enough, Krex shouted. But the damage was done. His crew had heard the reports. Word was spreading through his fleet that they were fighting. Beings who had evolved to survive on a world that was actively trying to kill them. Captain Wu Jin arrived in the system with the heavy cruiser Busan Thunder, just as Krex was beginning to understand what he faced. The new human ship was bigger than the first 3, and it moved with the same predatory grace that marked all human vessels. Admiral Kyung, Captain Wu Jin reported, I have orders to implement Deathworlder protocols. My Marines are ready for deployment. Major Sola commanded the Marines on Wu Jin's ship. She was a small woman with scars on her face and eyes that had seen too much combat. Her troops were different from Colonel Jiho's Marines. These were specialists trained for the worst kinds of fighting. Major, Admiral Kyung said over the radio, what exactly are Deathworlder protocols? Things we do not like to do, sir, Sola replied, but things we are very good at. The Nexari learned what she meant when her Marines began their assault on the main Nexari battleship. Instead of boarding pods, they used something much worse. They blew holes in the enemy ship and then flew through space without any protection except their armor. They're jumping between ships, screamed a Nexari officer. In hard vacuum, without life support. What the Nexari did not understand was that humans had evolved to survive in conditions that would kill most species instantly. Their dense bones and thick muscles let them survive impacts that would shatter crystalline aliens. Their efficient lungs let them hold their breath longer than seemed possible. Major Sola herself led the assault on the battleship's bridge. She flew through space like a missile, crashed through the bridge windows, and was fighting Nexari crew, members before they could even sound an alarm. The sight of a human warrior fighting in a decompressed ship, surrounded by floating debris and emergency lights, became the stuff of nightmares for the Nexari Empire. But the real shock came when Captain Bora demonstrated kinetic bombardment. Instead of using energy weapons like most civilized species, she loaded her ship's railgun with chunks of asteroid rock and fired them at Nexari vessels. They're throwing rocks at us, a Nexari captain reported in disbelief. Actual rocks! But rocks moving at a significant fraction of light speed hit harder than most energy weapons. A piece of iron ore, accelerated by human magnetic rails, went through a Nexari cruiser's shields like they were not even there and tore the ship in half. How do they make rocks so dangerous? Krex demanded. His science officer had the answer, and it terrified him. Sir, they understand physics in ways we never considered. They do not just use technology, they use the laws of the universe as weapons. The Velthari watched all of this from their damaged station. They had thought the first human attack was impressive. Now they realized They had only seen the beginning. They fight like the universe itself is their weapon, Thylex said quietly. Gravity, momentum, vacuum, radiation. They use everything. Lieutenant Yunji demonstrated this when she hacked into the Nexari fleet's communication system, but instead of just jamming their signals, she turned their own computers against them. Nexari ships began targeting each other, their own weapons. Systems convinced that nearby allies were actually enemies. Our computers think we are the enemy, a Nexari ship captain called out over the radio. Our own missiles are chasing us. Warlord Krex tried to retreat, but retreat was not something humans understood in the same way as other species. Most civilizations would let a defeated enemy withdraw to avoid unnecessary casualties. Humans had different ideas. Sir, his navigation officer reported, the humans are pursuing us, all of them. They're not letting anyone escape. This was when Krex truly understood the difference between fighting a civilized species and fighting Deathworlders. Civilized species fought for territory, or resources or political advantage. Deathworlders fought for survival, and they had learned that letting dangerous enemies escape just meant fighting them again later. They mean to destroy us completely, Krex realized. Not just defeat us, destroy us. Colonel Jiho's voice came over the emergency channel that all ships monitored. Nexari Fleet, this is Colonel Jiho of the Earth Defense Force. You have two choices. Surrender now and be treated according to galactic law, or continue fighting and be destroyed completely. We do not leave enemies behind us. The words were spoken calmly, but they carried the weight of absolute certainty. This was not a threat or a bluff. This was a simple statement of fact from beings who had spent millions of years learning that half measures meant death. Some Nexari ships tried to surrender. Others tried to run. A few tried to keep fighting. The humans dealt with each group efficiently and without emotion. Surrendering ships were captured and their crews detained. Running ships were hunted down one by one. Fighting ships were destroyed with the same methodical precision that humans used for everything. By the end of the day, the great Nexari invasion fleet had ceased to exist. Some ships had been captured, some had been destroyed, and some had been damaged so badly that they would never fly again. Warlord Krex himself sat in his command chair, surrounded by human marines. His ship was intact but powerless, its weapons offline and its engines dead. You fought well, Colonel Jiho told him with something that might have been respect. But you made one mistake. What mistake? Krex asked. You threatened our friends, Jiho replied. Humans do not forget that kind of thing. The arrival of Task Force Hammer changed everything. 60 human warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming under the light of Kepler 442's star. At the center of the fleet, the dreadnought Sol Sunrise was a mountain of metal and weapons that made space itself seem smaller. Fleet Admiral Dongmin stood on his bridge, looking out at the asteroid field where the battle had taken place. Debris from Nexari ships floated between the rocks like a metal graveyard. His ships moved through it carefully, their sensors recording every detail. Admiral Kyung, Dongmin said over the radio. Report. Mission accomplished, sir, Kyung replied, from his much smaller flagship. The Nexari invasion fleet has been neutralized. The Velthari are safe. Dongmin nodded. He had expected nothing less from Kyung, but seeing the results was still impressive. 3 ships had stopped an entire invasion. Now 60 ships would make sure no one ever tried to threaten these aliens again. Captain Hyeji commanded the carrier Jeju Storm. Her ship was full of fighters and bombers. each one piloted by humans who had trained their whole lives for war. She watched the Velthari station through her view screen and felt something she had not expected: protective anger. These aliens asked for help, she told her squadron leaders. They trusted us to save them. We will not let anyone hurt them again. Commodore Sang-hoon led the destroyer squadron. His ships were smaller than the big cruisers, but they were fast and deadly. They spread out through the system like hunting wolves, their sensors searching for any sign of remaining enemies. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "I'm detecting Nexari communication signals from outside the system. Long-range transmissions." "They're calling for help," Sang-hoon realized. "The Nexari Empire knows what happened here." On the mining station, Thylex watched the human fleet with emotions he could not name. Fear was part of it. So many warships, each one capable of destroying his entire station. But there was also something like gratitude, and maybe even a strange kind of awe. "They came back," Valara said quietly. "After the fighting was over, they came back with more ships. To protect us," Thylex realized. "They think the Nexari might return with a bigger fleet." That was exactly what the humans thought. Admiral Dongmin had studied the reports from the battle, and he knew that the Nexari Empire would not ignore such a defeat. They would send more ships, bigger fleets, until they either won or lost everything trying. "Lieutenant Unji," Dongmin called to his communications officer, "patch me through to all ships in the fleet." When every captain was listening, Dongmin spoke the words that would define humanity's role in the galaxy. "We came here to help one species defend their home. But this is bigger than one battle or one system. The Nexari Empire has made this personal by threatening people under our protection. We will not leave until this threat is ended completely." Commander Nari led the fighter squadrons off the carrier. Her pilots were young and eager, trained on the dangerous skies of Earth, where a single mistake meant death. They flew patrols around the system, their ships moving in formations that no other species had ever developed. "Contact," called pilot Dohyun from the edge of the system. "3 Nexari scout ships trying to slip past our perimeter." "Intercept and destroy," Nari ordered. "Do not let them report back to their fleet." The scout ships tried to run, but human fighters were faster. They had been built by a species that understood that speed meant survival. Within minutes, the Nexari scouts were gone, their final transmissions cut off before they could send word of the human fleet. Marine General Johan commanded the ground forces. His troops were prepared for planetary assault, boarding actions, and every other kind of fighting that humans had invented. They practiced constantly, turning the empty spaces of their ships into training grounds. "Sir," his aide asked, "what are we training for? The battle is over." "The battle is over," Johan agreed. "But the war is just beginning." He was right. Deep in Nexari space, Emperor Thaxos received the news of Krex's defeat with cold fury. He was an ancient Nexari who had conquered more worlds than any other being in the galaxy. No species had ever defeated his fleets so completely. "These humans," he said to his war council, "what do we know about them?" "Very little, Emperor," replied his intelligence chief. "They are new to space. Their territory is small, but their military technology is unusual." "Unusual how?" "They do not fight like civilized beings, Emperor. They use tactics that risk their own lives. They turn their ships into weapons. They board enemy vessels during active combat. Our analysts believe they may be suffering from a species-wide mental illness that makes them unable to assess risk properly." Emperor Thaxos laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. "Mental illness? or perfect evolution for warfare. Send word to all our fleets. I want every ship, every warrior, every weapon we possess. We will show these humans what happens when someone challenges the Nexari Empire." The order went out across the Nexari Empire. From 100 conquered worlds, ships began moving toward human space. This would be the largest fleet ever assembled, big enough to conquer entire star systems. But the humans were not waiting passively. Admiral Dong Min had sent his own messages back to Earth, and the response was everything he had hoped for. "Sir," Captain Wu Jin reported, "I'm receiving a transmission from Earth Command, Priority 1 encryption." The message was short but powerful. "Task Force Hammer is now the advance guard of the Terra Defense Fleet. 70 additional ships are en route. Rules of engagement, total war protocols authorized." Dong Min felt a cold satisfaction. Total war protocols meant that Earth was no longer treating this as a limited conflict. The full military might of humanity was being brought to bear on the Nexari Empire. "Commodore Sang-hoon," he called, "take your destroyers and scout the approaches to Nexari space. I want to know exactly what we're facing." "Understood, sir. My ships are fast enough to outrun anything they have." Lieutenant Sun-ho had been promoted to squadron leader after his performance in the first battle. Now, he led reconnaissance missions deep into enemy territory, his pilots mapping Nexari positions and counting their ships. "Admiral," he reported after one such mission, "you're not going to believe what they're putting together. I count over 400 capital ships gathering at their main fleet base. Maybe more." 400, Dong Min repeated. "They really want us dead." Colonel Jiho had been studying the captured Nexari officers, learning about their military culture and psychology. What he discovered was both useful and troubling. "Sir," he reported to Dong Min, "the Nexari see this as a war for their survival. In their minds, if they let us defeat them, other species will think the Nexari Empire is weak. They would rather destroy themselves than accept that kind of humiliation. So they will keep coming until one of us is completely destroyed," Dong Min. "Realized." "That's my assessment, sir." Dong Min looked out at his fleet. 60 ships, with 70 more coming, against 400 or more Nexari vessels. By traditional military thinking, the humans were hopelessly outnumbered, but humans had never been traditional. "Send a message to the Nexari Emperor," Dong Min ordered. "Tell him that we are willing to discuss terms for his surrender." His officers looked at him in shock. Offering surrender terms to an enemy 4 times larger than their own fleet seemed like madness. But Dong Min was not being arrogant. He was doing what humans had always done when facing impossible odds. He was making the enemy wonder if maybe, just maybe, the humans knew something they did not. The message went out through space. Emperor Thaxos read it and felt something he had not experienced in centuries: doubt. What kind of species offers surrender terms when outnumbered 4 to 1? What did these humans know that he did not? The Battle of Kepler 442 was over, but its effects rippled across the galaxy like waves from a stone thrown into still water. In the space of a single day, everything that civilized species thought they knew about warfare had been proven wrong. On the Velthari mining station, Thylex stood in his rebuilt command center and watched human engineers working alongside his own people. The differences between the species were still obvious. Humans thick and strong, Velthari thin and graceful, but they worked together with surprising harmony. "Commander Thylex," called Captain Bora as she entered the command center. "The new defense platforms are online. If anyone tries to attack this station again, they'll get a very unpleasant surprise. Thylex nodded gratefully. The defense platforms were human technology, designed to protect the Velthari even when no human ships were present. But more than that, they were a promise. A statement that humans meant what they said when they offered protection. "Captain," Thylex said carefully, "I owe you an apology. When we first met, I was afraid of your people." Bora smiled. And this time Thylex did not see threatening teeth. He saw genuine warmth. "You were right to be afraid," she said. "We are dangerous, but we're dangerous to people who threaten our friends, not to our friends themselves." That distinction had taken the Velthari time to understand. Humans could be gentle protectors and ruthless warriors at the same time, switching between the two roles as easily as breathing. Diplomatic Corps Officer Ara had arrived with the main fleet to handle. First contact protocols. She was young for such an important job, but she had studied alien psychology and understood how other species thought about warfare. The key, she explained to Admiral Dongmin, is helping them understand that human aggression is directed outward, not inward. We protect the group by destroying threats to the group. It was working slowly. The Velthari had been the first to sign a formal alliance with humanity, but they would not be the last. Word of the battle had spread to other peaceful species, and many of them were beginning to see humans as potential protectors rather than potential threats. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy about humanity's arrival. Captain Minjay commanded. The heavy cruiser Incheon Victory, one of the ships tasked with establishing permanent human bases in the Kepler system. His engineers were building supply depots, communication arrays, and repair facilities that would let human fleets operate far from Earth. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "I'm picking up diplomatic traffic from the Borvac Empire. They're demanding that the Galactic Council address the human problem immediately." The Borvac Empire was one of the galaxy's major military powers. They had built their civilization on conquest and expansion, much like the Nexari, but with more political sophistication. The idea of another warrior species challenging their dominance did not appeal to them. "Let them complain," Minjay said. "If they want to find out how dangerous humans really are, they're welcome to try." Meanwhile, in the ruins of the Nexari fleet base, Emperor Thaxos received reports that made his blood run cold. The humans had not been satisfied with destroying his invasion fleet. They had followed the retreating ships back to their bases and systematically eliminated every Nexari military installation they could find. "How many ships do we have left?" Thaxos asked his fleet commander. 47 operational vessels, Emperor, out of over 600. Thaxos felt something break inside his chest. The Nexari Empire, which had dominated this part of the galaxy for centuries, had been reduced to a minor power in a matter of weeks. "The humans," he said quietly. "What are they demanding for peace?" "Complete withdrawal from all occupied worlds, Emperor. Full reparations to species we have conquered, and supervised disarmament of our remaining fleet." These were not terms of surrender. These were terms of complete defeat. The Nexari Empire would cease to exist as a military power. But the alternative was even worse. Admiral Dongmin had made it clear that if the Nexari refused to negotiate, humanity would continue its attacks until there were no Nexari ships left anywhere in the galaxy. "Send word to all our commanders," Thaxos said finally. "We accept the human terms." The news of Nexari surrender spread through the galaxy even faster than news of their defeat. In a single campaign, humanity had destroyed the most feared military, power in known space, and forced them to release dozens of conquered worlds. Other species began to reassess their own military capabilities. If the Nexari could be defeated so completely, what did that say about everyone else's chances against humans? The peaceful Zeltani were among the first to approach humanity with offers of trade and cooperation. Their ambassador, a graceful being, with silver skin and multiple arms, met with diplomatic officer Ara on the neutral world of Telos Prime. "Your people have done something remarkable," the ambassador said. "You have made the galaxy safer for all peaceful species. The Zeltani would be honored to share our knowledge of medicine and agriculture with humanity." Ara smiled diplomatically. "We appreciate the offer. Humanity is always interested in peaceful cooperation with other species." But she also made sure the ambassador understood that human protection came with human presence. If the Zeltani wanted human security guarantees, they would have to accept human naval bases in their territory. The ambassador agreed immediately. Having humans nearby was a small price to pay for never having to worry about invasion again. Not everyone was so welcoming. The Corvani Federation, a collection of militaristic species, began forming a defensive alliance aimed at containing human expansion. They were careful not to call it anti-human, but everyone understood what it really was. "Let them form their alliances," Admiral Dong Min told his staff. "As long as they don't threaten our friends or our territory, we have no quarrel with them." But privately, he made sure that human intelligence services kept close watch on Corvani military movements. Humans had learned long ago that today's defensive alliance often became tomorrow's invasion force. The real change came in how warfare itself was conducted throughout the galaxy. Other species began studying human tactics, trying to understand how beings from a single world had revolutionized military thinking. Some of what they learned could be copied. Better coordination between ships, more aggressive use of technology, and willingness to take calculated risks all became standard practice for non-human fleets. But the core of human military advantage could not be replicated. Other species had not evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They had not spent millions of years learning that survival required constant vigilance and absolute commitment to protecting the group. Captain Hyeji, now promoted to Admiral and commanding the Kepler Defense Fleet, received regular reports on galactic military developments. Most of them amused her. "Sir," her intelligence officer reported, "the Dravani Republic is trying to train their pilots in human-style aggressive maneuvers. So far, they've lost 12 ships in training accidents." "They're trying to copy tactics without understanding the psychology behind them," Hyeji observed. "You can't teach someone to be comfortable with mortal danger. They either grow up with it or they don't." The Velthari had become humanity's closest allies, and their perspective on the changes was unique. Thylex, now serving as liaison between his people and the human military, tried to explain it to a gathering of galactic ambassadors. "You think, humans are violent," he said to the assembled aliens. "But you are wrong. Humans are protective. They fight not because they enjoy destruction, but because they cannot bear to watch innocents suffer. On their world, the strong protect the weak, or everyone dies." They brought that instinct to the stars with them. The ambassadors listened politely, but many of them remained skeptical. How could a species be both peaceful and terrifyingly effective at war? The answer came during the Zelthani crisis, 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442. Pirates from the Void clans attacked a Zelthani colony world, confident that the peaceful aliens would be easy prey. The human response was swift and merciless. Admiral Dong Min himself led a task force that hunted down every pirate ship in the sector. But when they captured the pirates, they treated them according to galactic law, fairly and without unnecessary cruelty. "This is what you don't understand," Dong Min explained to the captured pirate leader. "We don't fight because we hate our enemies. We fight because we love our friends." The pirate, a scarred veteran of a dozen raids, looked into Dong Min's eyes and saw something that chilled him to the bone. This human would kill him without hesitation if necessary, but would also protect him once he surrendered. It was the mindset of a perfect predator that had chosen to be a guardian instead. Word of the pirates' fate spread through the criminal underworld. Within months, attacks on human-protected worlds dropped to almost zero. No one wanted to face beings who combined tactical brilliance with absolute moral certainty. The galaxy settled into a new equilibrium. Peaceful species sought human protection. Aggressive species either reformed their ways or found themselves facing human fleets. The ancient cycle of conquest and suffering that had defined galactic politics for millennia began to break down. On Earth, historians would later mark the Battle of Kepler 442 as the moment humanity stepped onto the galactic stage. But they also noted something else.